It's a little chilly out today. A little wet, rainy, but it's not raining in the normal sense. It's raining down pro day information. It's a pro day extravaganza today, as it seems like everybody was having their pro day. All the guys that we've been hearing about, looking to put numbers to names. We got a lot of information today, and some dudes checked off some boxes and made some money today. We're going to talk about it here on the Louie T Network podcast. Who else could it be? Me, Jamin, Louie T. Welcome to the 152nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Got a lot to get to today. Really, I just want to talk about these pro days, man, and kind of get your reaction. So I'm going to start the show off talking about all of these pro days, some players that caught my eye, the ones we've been waiting on, and some guys that maybe you're not waiting on that had pro days as well. And we'll talk about as many of them as I can get in, and, you know, just mention a few names off to the side that, you know, won't be first or second day picks more likely than not if they get drafted at all, and just throw those guys out there as well and what I think about them, and just kind of get your reaction to some of the news and some of the times and information that was dropped in your lap today, if you were able to consume it. If not, I'll be able to provide you with some of that information here on the pod today. So I know a lot of you are following this thing probably more closely than I am. So a lot of this is not news to you. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. However, there are people that don't follow this as closely. And so I want to keep them abreast of what's going on as well. It's a little scattered all over the place this year, obviously, with no combine. A lot of this stuff we should have already known. You know, that's the problem with no combine, is we get all of these guys in one central location, and we would have had most of this information already. How big a guy is, how fast a guy runs, how high a guy jumps. We would have had all of this stuff already. However, because there was no combine this year, and everyone's going to this pro day format, and I don't think this is something that these players will have at their disposal moving forward, where there is no combine and that everything's done in geographical locations where, hey, you just got to come out to my school and come see me or come watch my personal pro day. I think that they want to have everybody in Indy or wherever they you know, threw around the idea of moving the combine around and not just having it in Indy every year, whatever the case may be. Indy is important, especially for medicals, more so than anything else. And so this year it's a little bit different because you're having to chase around all these numbers to find out what a guy did. Obviously, there's social media, and that's been really my biggest asset when trying to lock down what a guy runs, because you watch him on tape. And I told you that's all the combine is for me, is a cross-reference. You know, if I watch a guy on tape, there are about maybe, I'd say 10 to 12 guys a year where I go, I'm not sure. You know, he doesn't look super fast, but I just need to know. You know, or he looks kind of slow. I just need to know. And, you know, for the most part, you can see a guy run and you say, okay, he's fast. Or you see a guy and you're like, he looks a little slow to me. Usually the combine, or in this case, the pro days, they confirm it for you. There are times where you go, whoa, okay, he ran what? And it's either a good thing, like, whoa, or it's like, whoa, ugh. I didn't get any of that today. For the most part, I knew what these guys were. I just needed them to check boxes, and that they did. So we're going to talk about that today, and guys checking boxes. So let's get to the gym dropping session, and then after that, we'll jump into social media maneuvers where you guys are allowed to take over the show if you've got some comments that you want to have read on the air. If they're pertinent, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. You can also super chat as well to jump straight to the front of the line. Either way, let's get into the gem dropping session for today, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So let's jump into these pro days. It was a pro day galore. Some guys might have slipped under your radar if you weren't paying attention, because the LSU Pro Day grabbed all of the headlines. That was the main attraction of the day. But Notre Dame had their pro day, Kentucky had their pro day, Florida had their pro day. So a lot of pro days happening with a lot of players. I just named a couple of programs that are going to send a ton of players to the pro game in the upcoming draft. LSU, Florida, Notre Dame. These are all programs that are going to send multiple guys to the pros. In certain cases, like in LSU's case and Florida's, more likely than not, multiple first-round picks are coming out of those schools, with a bevy of other guys that will be selected in other rounds throughout the course of the draft. In Notre Dame's case, they've got one first-round pick, maybe a second, more likely than not just one, but they're going to fill up the stat sheet as well with a bunch of guys that ultimately get drafted and some undrafted guys that may make rosters down the road. So I want to get to, as I mentioned, the main attraction of the day, which was the LSU Pro Day. And we start with the guy that's probably going to come off the board. Let's not say probably. Let's talk indefinites here. The guy that's going to come off the board first from Louisiana State University, and that's, of course, wide receiver Jamar Chase. I wanted to know just how fast he was, because on tape, he's a guy that when you watch him, you know he's fast. You see he's fast. You see him outrun people. You know, I'm watching him in a game versus Vandy, and he just outruns everybody, outruns the angle of the safety who had an angle on the play, and that was the play where you go, okay, he's fast. But then you watch him against some of these other corners, and the separation isn't always there, but when the ball is in the air, he separates. So you know he can run, you know he's got acceleration, you know he's got explosion, he can go up and get the football. He's one of the better leapers in this draft, one of the better 50-50 ball guys in this draft. So I knew all of those things were going to be outstanding from a numbers standpoint, but still wanted to see those numbers come to fruition. We got our answer today. Not the biggest guy in the world. That's, you know, one of the knocks on him is he's not what you're looking for in your prototypical number one big body physical wide receiver. He's not 6'2", 215, 217. He's 6 feet, 201. That's not a problem for me. And it shouldn't be a problem for you if you're looking for a true number one wide receiver, because he has all of the measurables in terms, well, all of the DNA makeup and all of the skills to fit the criteria of a number one wide receiver. You don't have to be 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" to be a true number one in this league, as evident. Just look around the league and look at all the guys who make up the number one wide receivers in this league. He ran a 4.38 today, and for me, that was the number that I wanted to see. I thought, look, and let's just let's say this right now, because everyone that is running, these are hand times. So hand times are going to be inaccurate. There is no time that is going to be just a set in stone time. This isn't a laser like at the combine where, you know, it's funny because when we're doing the combine thing and they go to Charlie Casserly, who's doing his little hand time, and Charlie's doing the little eye thing. When they cross, he hits it. Charlie will say the dude ran a 4.37, and the laser will say he ran a 4.42. So, look, hand times are definitely inaccurate. They are prone to human error. Look, I don't really care. If a guy's fast, if we're talking about the difference between a 4.38 and a 4.42, he's fast, okay? That's all you should take away from that. No one's going to be talking about, well, that corner ran a 4.37 and he only ran a 4.42, so he can't run by him. No, he's got plenty of speed. If that guy gets beat off the line of scrimmage, that 4.42 is plenty fast to beat that 4.37 corner. Trust me. So 4.38, 4.42, who gives a shit? He's fast. That's all you should care about, okay? 41-inch vert shows you the explosion. The 11-foot broad for Ja'Marr Chase just caps it off. If there was any doubt as to whether this guy was the number one wide receiver in this draft, I think he silenced all of that today with his numbers, okay? And the fact that Devontae Smith won't run, and he can run, he's fully capable of running. His injury wasn't sustained to his lower extremities. He's got a hand injury. As evident, he just caught at the pro day of Mac Jones yesterday. He can run, he just doesn't want to, and that's fine. The tape is there. As he said, look, you got all the information you need, go watch the tape. So Ja'Marr Chase decided to put it on full display. To me, it's not a question of whether he's the number one wide receiver. It's just when does he come off the board. And he was always my number one guy in the clubhouse. And today he solidified that for me. So Ja'Marr Chase went and balled out, but he wasn't alone. He brought a friend with him, okay? Wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. from LSU. I still contend, and there are people that will argue me up and down, and that's fine. This is a debatable topic. I don't feel like I have to be right on this one. But I feel like the 2019 LSU offense was the most talented offense I've ever seen. And people will argue that the 2020 Alabama version is better in terms of talent. And that's debatable for me, because in my eyes, you got Ja'Marr Chase, you got Terrace Marshall, and you got my man that got drafted last year in the first round to the Minnesota Vikings, okay? Justin Jefferson. To me, you're talking 3 first-round picks. You're talking about 3 guys that are just extraordinary, bigger-bodied guys and physical but run after the catch guys, good route runners. Just, to me, an all-around game-changing group there. And Joe Burrow pulling the strings, which I think he's better than Tua. I think he's better than Mac Jones. I told you that last year. Obviously, I don't think Mac Jones is better than Joe Burrow. Nobody else does either. So I think you win there. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire and what he was for them last year and what he is as a football player. And we saw a little bit of that with the Chiefs this past year. Alabama says, hey, we got Najee Harris. Touche. Not really much I can say about that because he's a beast in his own right. But Thad Moss was a really good tight end for them last year. I don't think Alabama actually had anybody that scares you at the tight end position. So I think the nod goes to LSU there. We start talking about the offensive line. I think there were more guys on the Alabama offensive line, more likely than not, when it's all said and done, that may have, better NFL careers. But we'll see. There are a lot of guys that got plucked off of that LSU offensive line last year in the draft. So we'll see what happens with that. But I just love that LSU crop of receivers and skill players last year. And here's another guy from that group. Really, he played this year, unlike Ja'Marr Chase, who opted out of the 2020 season. Terrace Marshall Jr. went back and played in 2020. He was really the lone soldier there. There was no Joe Burrow. There was no Ja'Marr Chase. There was no Justin Jefferson. There was no Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He was essentially a lone soldier. And he went out and he balled in a bunch of games this year, showed the talent, and measured out at 6'2.5" today, 205 pounds, ran a 4.4 140. Depending on who you ask, he ran a 4.38. Again, 4.41, 4.38. Who gives a shit? He's blazing fast. And you can see that on tape. I didn't need the 40 to tell me that, okay? 39-inch vert shows the explosion, 10.5 broad. The guy checked all the boxes. He's going to be a first-round pick. I think this is another draft in which we see 5-6 receivers go in the first round. I think we saw 6 go last year. I didn't think 6 guys needed to be drafted in the first round. I didn't think Jalen Reagor was a first-round pick last year, but whatever the case may be, I think we're going to see another one of these drafts where 5-6 receivers come off the board in the first round. And Marshall, I think, just punched his ticket to be a first-round pick in this draft, and he looks the part. He looks the part. Love the fact that he can play in the slot and move this guy around. Terrace Marshall Jr. made himself some money today with his pro day. Kyle Pitts, let's shift gears and go to Florida because I just talked about Ja'Marr Chase. I just talked about Terrace Marshall. we might have a tight end go before all of those guys. We may have the tight end position have the top popped first before the wide receiver has the top popped on it. Kyle Pitts is in the discussion to come off the board before any wide receiver does. This is a really interesting draft with a lot of different moving parts. I'm going to talk about that here in a second, but let's get to Kyle Pitts and his performance today, because much like the performance a few days ago from Micah Parsons, where he just obliterated his pro day, Kyle Pitts did the same thing on the offensive side of the football. I don't think anybody's going to match what Kyle Pitts did at his pro day today, and I don't think anybody on the defensive side of the football is going to match what Micah Parsons did on the defensive side of the football. 5'5.5" for Kyle Pitts. We already knew this guy was a tall, long, athletic freak. We already knew that. Pause. We already knew that. But to measure out at 6'5.5", 245, which right then and there gives you the kind of NFL tight end frame you're looking for. 33-inch arms, 83-inch wingspan. Are you kidding me? And we already knew his arms were ridiculously long. 4'4'4", the Moses Malone 4'40", okay? The old Moses Malone, 10'9" broad to go along with that for just a ridiculous day. Just a day of epic proportions for Kyle Pitts. But again, is anybody surprised? I'm not surprised by any of these numbers. It's just still crazy to see a guy in that frame, that big, be able to run that fast. But none of this is a surprise to me. It really isn't. So he's going to come off the board relatively early. He's going to be a top 10 pick. The question is he a top 5 selection? So here's what I find interesting. Kyle Pitts was asked today about contact that he's had with teams within the top 5. He said he hasn't been contacted by any of the first 3 teams, San Francisco included, but he has had conversations with the Atlanta Falcons at 4. He's been on 2 Zoom conference calls with the Falcons. He spoke with them again today. They've got another Zoom conference call set up for next week. It sounds like the Atlanta Falcons are extremely interested. Doesn't mean they're going to pull the trigger on Kyle Pitts at 4, but it does speak to the level of talent that this guy has, that the Falcons are considering passing on quarterback altogether to take a guy that, I don't want to call him once in a generation. We throw that around too loosely, but it's not often you see a freak like this at the tight end position. These don't come around very often. He's a generational talent for sure. You know, one of these guys that you see once every 7 years or so. And that's what I consider a generational talent, you know. But at this position, it's about 7 years or so between when you see a guy like this and the next time you see a guy like this. When you say generational talent at edge rusher, they could come along every other year, but does it take away from the fact that this guy is a freak? You know, like Chase Young, but we saw both the Bozas come around, you know, just the year prior to that and 2 years before that or whatever it was. So it's rare at the tight end position. The Falcons offense operates at a different level when they've got a tight end. And, you know, for years, they've had that position really locked up. And Tony Gonzalez more recently, Austin Hooper a year ago before he moved on in free agency. I don't know if they love what they're getting out of Hayden Hurst or not, so much so that they would go after Kyle Pitts. But if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, I've been steadfast in my belief. They've got a new GM in Terry Fontenot, who came from New Orleans. I was having a discussion on Twitter with a few Washington fans about the prospects of Washington potentially getting up to number 4 to draft a quarterback. Most likely than not, it'd have to be, you know, Justin Fields, who Washington had been rumored to be smitten with. And I said, there's no way Atlanta, with a brand new GM coming from New Orleans, who wants to put his stamp on this franchise, who just came from New Orleans where they didn't really have a plan in place after Drew Brees retired. They were just kind of winging it. And really, that's kind of the fault of Drew Brees, because He didn't know when he was going to retire. They didn't know when he was going to retire. You don't want to draft a guy when Drew Brees was 37. He plays till he's 41, and you're like, well, shit, we got this guy sitting here. You don't want what the Packers have on their hands in Green Bay with Jordan Love, where you've got a guy that doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon, but you're going to have to run him out of town because you drafted a guy in the first round, and at some point, you need that young guy to play so you can find out if you made the right decision or not, and if you need to re-up with that quarterback. They never did that in New Orleans. So they've got to go with Jameis Winston on a one-year deal, and we don't know what Taysom Hill's role is going to be in New Orleans. To avoid all of that, Matt Ryan's 36. You understand that Matt Ryan isn't going to be able to play forever. Maybe Matt Ryan is able to play into his 40s. We see that as a new trend in this league. That is factual. But at the end of the day, if you have to move on, you have to move on. Just like Matthew Stafford moved on, just like Tom Brady moved on. And usually when we see some of the greats in this league want to play a little bit longer than the organization they've played for their entire careers want them around for, we've seen some of the greats like Joe Montana have to finish their careers elsewhere. It's not uncommon that this happens. Peyton Manning, even though there was a different set of circumstances there. Brett Favre, again, same kind of deal, different set of circumstances. But a lot of times, our favorite heroes at the quarterback position, all right, the legends of the game don't finish where they started a lot of times because you've got to be able to move on. You cannot allow that guy to continue to string you along. That's what's going to happen to Pittsburgh. I hope people understand it. If they don't get Dwayne Haskins to turn out to be a beast in his second act in Pittsburgh, if he doesn't get it and turn the switch on in Pittsburgh, they're going to be left with Mason Rudolph and a bunch of bums, and they're going to be stuck in quarterback hell until they get in a position, as Mike Tomlin said, I never want to be in a position bad enough to draft a guy like Chase Young. He was drafted second overall. They'll be there if they have to roll with Mason Rudolph or some bum on their roster at the quarterback position. And that's where they are because they haven't planned for the future. You've got a chance to plan for the future if you're the Atlanta Falcons at 4. You don't plan on being here. Hell, you didn't plan on being at 4 this past year, okay? If things would have gone the way that they should have gone, if you were able to hold on to leads, worst case scenario, you're a 7-9, 8-8 ball club, and you're drafting somewhere at 16, 17 instead of drafting at number 4. You don't plan on being back here, especially if Matt Ryan's going to be your quarterback for the next couple of years. You're expecting to win ball games. You brought in Arthur Smith to be your new head coach. You think he's going to turn around the offense and maybe stabilize the defense. We'll see what happens in Atlanta. You can't pass up this opportunity to get a quarterback and have him sit and learn behind Matt Ryan, who's been one of the better quarterbacks in this league over the last decade, and have a plan in place when Matt Ryan is no longer the guy in Atlanta. But they're mulling over it. This is proof of it. And look, it's just called doing your due diligence. They may have no intentions of drafting Kyle Pitts, but they're doing their due diligence on a player. I liken it to Washington last year meeting with Joe Burrow on multiple occasions. Why? You do your due diligence. They knew good and well Joe Burrow wasn't going to be there at number 2. They knew he was coming off the board at number 1 in Cincinnati, but you never know what the situation brings, and you just never know. Down the road, Joe Burrow may become a free agent. You did your homework on him during the draft process. You love this kid. You want to give him a shot. So just because the Falcons seem very interested doesn't mean that Kyle Pitts is going to end up a Falcon at number 4, but I wouldn't rule it out if I were you. I'm sticking with the 4-for-4 model. 4 picks, 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 4 picks of this upcoming draft. But Kyle Pitts is a very intriguing prospect, and one that I could see the Atlanta Falcons saying, you know what? We're in win now mode. We think we can turn this thing around and win 11 games, 12 games in 2021 and go 12-5 or 11-6, make the postseason and make some noise. Why the hell not? Drafting Kyle Pitts changes the offense. My whole thing is your offense isn't broken in Atlanta, okay? Kyle Pitts would surely add to that offensive firepower. But the offense wasn't the problem in Atlanta, okay? It was the defense. So we'll see what the Falcons do. I wouldn't blame them for taking Kyle Pitts, but if they 3 years from now are looking up and saying, all right, Matt Ryan's on his last legs and we don't have a quarterback ready to go in, I'm going to circle back to the 2021 NFL draft where you had the 4th pick and you had a chance to take, one of 2 or 3 quarterbacks remaining on the board and you decided to take a tight end. And look, this guy could be the next Tony Gonzalez. He could be the next Antonio Gates. He could be the next big thing at the tight end position and a future Hall of Famer. And to that, I say, I don't blame you. That's why I would even entertain this thought. But at the same time, we know what the quarterback position is. So it's interesting, to say the least. If they took Kyle Pitts, I wouldn't bat an eye. Because, look, I could see Matt Ryan playing 5 more years. He's 36 years old. He'll be 36 in May. I could see him playing 5 more years. And if that's the case, then you don't feel bad. Kyle Pitts will be right at the end of his rookie deal. You don't feel bad about riding this thing out with Matt Ryan. And he's got, I think, 3 years left on his deal, 3-4 years. He just signed that deal not too long ago. It's not like they're looking to run Matt Ryan out of town. So we'll see what they decide to do. I find that interesting. But let's move on to one of his teammates at Florida, Kadarius Toney. This is another guy people are tossing around as a potential first-round pick. More likely than not, he'll be a first-round pick. I found it really interesting that everyone wanted him to be this blazer, this guy that was going to run a 4.2 something. I'm like, I didn't see that on tape. I don't know what tape you're watching. I didn't even see 4.3. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I didn't see 4.3 speed. I know 4.4 when I see it. I saw 4.4. I didn't see 4.3. 4.3 is next level. When you see a guy running a 4.35, you're like, okay, shit, he can run. He's got jetpacks. Like Jalen Waddle, when you watch guys like him and Henry Ruggs when he was in the draft last year, that's different. Tyreek Hill, Will Fuller, that's different. You know when you see different speed, like, okay, that's different. That's not your average 4.4 type of, runner right there. That's a pure track athlete right there. That's 4.3 something. That's 4.2 something. That's different. I didn't see that with Kadarius Toney. I was like, excuse me, sorry, I didn't see it. He's a 4.4 guy, and that's okay. 4.4 is plenty fast, but miss me on the comparisons to your favorite dynamic athlete that's running a 4.3 or 4.2 in the league. Like, I heard some people, he's Tyreek Hill. No, he's not. Stop. Don't do that. He's not. He's not even John Ross in terms of speed. And today kind of proved that. He ran a 4.41. Okay? Ran a 4.41. And that's okay. That's plenty fast. All right? He was clocked somewhere in the 4.41 to 4.44 neighborhood. I could see 4.41 on Kadarius Toney. He's plenty fast. Trust me. But I saw dynamic speed. I didn't see next level speed. I saw dynamic speed. He 11.4 broad shows you the explosiveness. What's going to ultimately make him money at the next level is the speed that he showcased today. Is the explosion and the explosiveness that broad shows, the 11.4. But it's also the agility, the quicks. The 3-cone is an interesting number for him. The short shuttle would be an interesting number for him. I wasn't able to track those down. I'm pretty sure they're out there somewhere. I wasn't hungry enough for it because I know the guy's got a through the roof agility. I don't need to go track those down to know, okay? All he did was check boxes today. And if you felt good about Kadarius Toney before the 4.41 and 11.4 broad, you feel even better about him now because he checked off boxes. If you didn't love Kadarius Toney, this didn't do anything for you. It didn't move you in any regards because you knew he was fast when you watched him on tape. So Kadarius Toney, if you viewed him as a first-round pick, he's still a first-round pick. If you didn't think he was a first-round pick coming in, you probably haven't changed your mind. And really, that's not what the Pro Day is for. The Pro Day is for cross-referencing. And if you didn't know about a guy and he blows you away athletically, then you say, you know what? I need to go back and watch. That was always the thing that the combine did for me. When I would get a 6'3" corner that ran a 4.42 and I'm like, never heard of him. I got some work to do. Or a receiver from a smaller school or a receiver that I wasn't paying attention to that played at Ole Miss that may not have been one of the stars on the team, but this guy's got some size and he's got some ability. Let's go see what he's got on tape. That's what the combine would do, and that's what some of these pro days may do for you. But again, for a guy like Kadarius Toney that was viewed as a potential first-round pick, all he did was check boxes today. All right. Let's switch gears and go to Notre Dame. And the star attraction there is JOK. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. This is a guy that, as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, I'll stand up on the table for, know the talent, know what he's about. And so he measured out at 6'1", 221, 33-inch arms, 78-inch wingspan, 10.4 broad, 36.5-inch vert. He did not run a 40. He opted not to run. I put my ears to the street on that one. And from what I gathered, today wasn't about running a 40 for him. Today was about showing that he could put on weight. So obviously when you put on weight, you may not be as comfortable with your 40 time. He was more of a guy that played around 213, 212 at Notre Dame. So, 214 at his peak. So when you put on, 9, 10 pounds of muscle, it may slow you down. And when you see what other guys are out here running, like a Micah Parsons, you don't want to look. I think even with the added weight, I think he's still a 4 or 5 guy. But what's crazy is with all these crazy times that are being boundied about, with everybody having their individual pro days and all these hand times, and everybody running probably a lot faster with these hand times. Every year we joke about how a guy runs a 4.47 at the combine, and then at his pro day he runs a 4.39. Like we see this shit all the time, right? So everybody's gonna have these asinine times. You don't want to be the guy that runs a 4.54, even though 4.54 is plenty fast for a weak side linebacker. It's plenty fast. But in today's age, especially this year, where everybody's running a sub 4.5, and in a lot of cases a sub 4.4, you don't want to run a 4.54. It looks slow compared to the rest of the guys running out here. And so you look fast on tape. You are fast. We know you're fast. He didn't want to run slower because he wanted to bulk up and show people he could put on weight. All he's got to do is show them that he can get up to 221, and they feel like, okay, we're getting 220 pound. And then when you get the guy, you draft him, you can go back down to 215 or 214, wherever he's comfortable, and he can run around at 4.47 where he's more comfortable. So I think that's more about why he didn't run today. It wasn't about running. It was about showing that I could put on weight, that I could be a little bit bigger, because he's not going to get too much bigger. He's not a 230 pound athlete. That's not what his body type is. He's more of a 215 pound. And there are guys out there that have said, I tried to be the 230 pound guy. That's not me. I'm not comfortable. Darius Leonard said that this year. Like, look, man, I tried to do the 230 pound thing. That's not me. I feel comfortable at 215. That's what I'm gonna play at. You're talking about a 215 pound middle linebacker, but that's what he's comfortable at. And you don't see a guy that has any problems taking on blockers or shedding blocks and getting to the ball. So if you're comfortable doing that and you can carry the weight and you're not being affected from a physical standpoint, physicality wise, knock your socks off and knock yourself out. And that's essentially what I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is trying to convey to everybody. Is I can put on this weight, but it may make me slower. I don't want you guys to see me running slow and then think I'm not fast. So probably it's smart on his part to not run, more likely than not. But in any event, he 6'1", 221, plenty big. The arms size and the wingspan is ridiculous for a guy of his size. And the vert and the broad shows his explosiveness. So you know what you're getting here in the kind of athlete that he is. Tommy Tremble is a guy that I talked about profusely on the Washington Football Reports, some 2 weeks ago, I guess, when I was asked about the tight end position and specifically Tommy Tremble. Being a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, I told you this guy's a jack of all trades. He does everything. He could be an H-back. He could be a fullback. He could be your tight end number 2. I don't think he's a tight end number 1 for anybody. I don't think that's what you should be asking of him, but I think he could be one of the best TE2s in the league, period. End of discussion. He'll block. He'll do the dirty work. He can catch the football. He's got soft hands. He's a better athlete than people give him credit for. I said, look, this guy is a legitimate 4.6. I thought he would be anywhere in the neighborhood of 4.58 to 4.63, and lo and behold, he ran a 4.6 flat today. And depending on who you ask, he ran a 4.58, 4.59, which is right where I thought he would run. You saw the athleticism for the last 3 years in Notre Dame. I knew what this guy was capable of. 6'3" is what he measured out at, 241 pounds, 32-inch arm, 78.5-inch wingspan, 4'6", flat, 40, 36.5-inch vert to go with a 10.2 broad. The guy's an athlete, man. And as I mentioned, you can put him anywhere on the field in a Swiss Army capacity. This guy can line up as a wing. This guy can line up as an H-back. He can line up as a fullback. You can do so many things with him in a 2 tight end set. If your tight end, your TE1 goes down, he can step in and temporarily give you TE1 production. I've seen him do it. So Tommy Tremble for me is a guy that I love, and I will look anybody in the eye and tell you he's a 2nd round pick all day long, all day strong, like a leaf. So for me, Tommy Tremble helped himself today, and I think he locked down a 2nd round pick. Will he be the 2nd tight end taken in this draft? Probably not. I still think Pat Freiermuth is going to be the 2nd tight end taken, but I think Tommy Tremble has the ability to be the 3rd tight end taken for sure. It wouldn't shock me if he was the 2nd tight end taken, because of his versatility, which you can't get from a Pat Freiermuth. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying I thought Tommy Tremble helped himself. And one last tidbit from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish Pro Day, and there were a ton of guys that worked out, a couple more receivers, Ben Skoranek, my man, the big tall receiver, McKinley worked out. None of those really jumped off the screen in terms of their measurables or their speed or anything that they did. A bunch of offensive linemen, as you come to expect from Notre Dame. Going to have a few of those go as well. But Ian Book is another guy that I like. I just look at Ian Book and I say, why can't he be Gardner Minshew? Like, why can't he be a later round draft pick that's mobile enough? And Ian Book ran a 4.65 today. So that tells you that there's athleticism there. So why can't he be a guy that runs around? Yeah, he's undersized, plenty of arm strength. Does he have the biggest arm in the world? No, absolutely not. But he can get the ball where it needs to go. He can play that schoolyard, backyard football. I see him as like a Doug Flutie type guy that just runs around and makes things happen. Ian Book is interesting to me. And maybe that's the Notre Dame bias in me. But I don't always love Notre Dame quarterbacks, even when they're good at Notre Dame. I didn't love Brady Quinn. I thought Brady Quinn stunk. And it proved that out at the next level. Like, I like Ian Book. I do. And he was one of the best Notre Dame quarterbacks in the history of the program. And this is a program that had Joe Montana and Joe Theismann and a bunch of other guys. But guess what? Ian Book was one of the greatest Notre Dame Fighting Irish quarterbacks. What does that say about Notre Dame Fighting Irish quarterbacks? Doesn't say much, right? But I like Ian Book, and I think he can play in this league as a backup. So that's interesting, just something I thought I'd note. But we move on to Kentucky's Pro Day. Jamin Davis. All right. I love calling him Jamin. It's Jamin Davis, okay? Jamin Davis. Or Jamin, excuse me. Jamin Davis. His name is Jamin Davis. That's how you pronounce it. Jamin Davis. This is a guy that I had a day 3 grade on. I didn't see what everybody else saw. I saw an undersized linebacker that I felt like struggled at times with the big boys inside. And at times, he was fighting to hold on for dear life inside. But there were times where he flashed and he made plays. That Tennessee game, if you're looking for a game to see the best of Jamin Davis, the Tennessee game from 2020 is the game you need to turn on. And you'll see everything you need to see. I walked away from that game saying, I could see this guy being a 2nd round pick. This guy right now is looked upon as the 2nd best linebacker in this draft behind, depending on who you ask, it's the 2nd best linebacker in this draft class behind Micah Parsons. And he did nothing today to dispel that notion. If anything, if your eyes were closed, they're wide open now after what he did at his pro day. Jamin Davis, 6'3", 234, which he didn't play at 234, last year. He looked like he was every bit of 223. So he put on some weight for sure for this pro day. But not only did he, but his frame looked like he could put on weight. And I think a lot of people were saying he's going to put on weight and he's still going to be an athlete. Well, not only did he put on the weight, he's 234. He ran a 4.41 at his pro day. Depending on who you ask, he ran a 4.37. I'm going to put the 4.41 down because I think the 4.37 is more of a hand time, human error, a couple of hundredths of a second came off there. That's fine. Whatever the case may be, it's blazing fast. He looks like today's NFL linebacker. He does. They're getting faster. They're getting more capable of running with wide receivers. He had a 42-inch vert, which tells you that the explosion and the time that he ran in the 40 is no fluke. He had an 11-foot broad. This guy tore it up at his pro day. And if there were any questions about him potentially being a first-round pick, he may have answered those with an eye-popping pro day. I didn't expect him to run that fast. I didn't. I said he's probably going to run a 4.51 or maybe a 4.49. He may sneak into the sub 4.5 region, but not by much. The man damn near ran a sub 4.4. He might have run a legitimate sub 4.4. He might be a legit 4.37, 4.38, 4.39 guy. Whatever the case may be, he blew me away with his 40 time. He blew me away, and I knew he could run. I did not think he was going to run that fast. I did not think he was going to jump that high. Jamin Davis might have just catapulted himself into the first round for sure. Cemented himself as a first round pick with what he was able to put forth at his pro day. So I can just tell you this. The tape for me didn't sell me on first round pick, but the potential is definitely there. The talent is definitely there. I still worry about his size. I do. But at 234, that's much different than the 223 or so I saw him playing at. I don't know what he was listed at Kentucky. He could have been listed at 227 for all I know. Matter of fact, let me look at my notes. I think I have Jamin Davis in here somewhere and what he is listed at Kentucky. See if I can track it down. Jamin Davis was listed at 224 at Kentucky. The man put on essentially 10 pounds. And honestly, that 224 easily could have been 220. All right. He looked like a string bean out there. He put on 10 pounds of muscle and still ran a 4.41. And again, depending on who you spoke to, he could have run a sub 4.4 or 4.38, 4.37. He lit it up way beyond my wildest imagination. And so he's a guy that's probably going to be a first round pick. And you can't pass that up. You can't pass up 6'3" with instincts. And I never question his instincts. I still think he's got a little ways to go in being a little bit more aggressive and attacking the line of scrimmage and things of that nature. But we saw the coverage ability. And if nothing else, if you tell me a guy that's 6'3", that's 234, that runs a sub 4.3 or sub 4.4 or right around it with a 42-inch vert and 11 broad with instincts in the passing game that can drop into coverage, you tell me that guy's available? You think I'm going to pass that up? Which is why Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is such a hot commodity. When you tell me there's a guy that can drop into coverage, and again, Jeremiah Owusu, he is not 6'3", 234, running a sub 4.4, okay? Which is why he didn't run today at 221, because he didn't want to look slow. He didn't want a Jamin Davis to show him up. He's going in the first round. Jamin Davis is going in the first round. He punched his ticket today. A couple of other notable names that I saw, and then we'll move on and get to your comments. If you're out there, you have a comment you want read, use the hashtag LouieTeeLive to have your comment read on the air. We'll get to a few of those comments if there are any out there. Let's go to Wake Forest real quick, and then we'll move on. Jamie Newman didn't do any tests today, and he needed to. He had a lackluster week at the Senior Bowl. He didn't play in 2020, had a chance to really announce himself to the college football world and to the NFL. He opted out of the season. Again, I have no issues with that. That's his decision. It was a costly one, if you ask me. And remember, I did a whole video, talked about it on the podcast even, that I thought the guy that lost the most this year by not playing was Jamie Newman. And I think I even did a video before the college football season, and might even had done it on the podcast where I said the guy that had the most to gain and the most to lose was Jamie Newman. And I think he has seen his draft stock drop more than any other quarterback that had, high hopes coming into the 2020 college football season. By not playing and then not following it up with a strong Senior Bowl and now not doing anything at his pro day, Jamie Newman, to me, I told you I didn't like what I saw on tape, and look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. You watch the same games I watched and you come out feeling differently about a guy than I did. That's the beauty of this process, is that we don't have to agree, and we can watch the same damn games and come up with two different, totally different evaluations of a player. I didn't like what I saw out of Jamie Newman, period. I didn't. And that's why it was important for him to go to Georgia, get in more of a pro-style offense, and really get a better feel for what he is as a quarterback. And he missed out on that opportunity. You couple that with him not having a strong Senior Bowl, now not doing anything at his pro day, as if he could afford to do that. He didn't run or anything. Because honestly, if he's not a tremendous athlete, what the hell are you drafting Jamie Newman for? Because I didn't see it at the quarterback position. You're drafting this guy off of sheer athleticism and the hope that you can develop him into some type of a passer at the next level. But if you're telling me, and I told you, I didn't think he was a tremendous athlete on tape. I saw an average athlete, maybe to slightly above average. I didn't see a guy that wowed me with his athleticism. So that was a little disappointing. Sage Surratt, the brother of Chaz Surratt, who we think is going to be more likely than not a second-round pick at the linebacker position in this year's draft out of North Carolina. His brother plays wide receiver at Wake Forest. He ran a 4.46. That's nasty. I think a lot of people were souring on him anyway. The tape wasn't anything that blew you away. Saw a lot of 50-50 balls that were contested that he went up and got, and that's his thing. But he's not running away from anybody running a 4.46 or a 4.66, excuse me. So he is another one of those guys that I think he'll hear his name called more likely than not. There's a bunch of receivers in this year's draft. It wouldn't shock me if he didn't hear his name called at all, but I think he'll hear his name called, but it'll definitely be back into the draft somewhere in the mid to latter portion of day number 3, just like Kyoko or Fioko, the receiver from Stanford, another one of those guys, jump ball guys, throw it up to, they can go get it. So just thought that was interesting and something that bared mentioning on this crazy pro day galore day. So with that said, let's go to our next segment. But before we do, let's get a word from one of our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Rental Karma. RentalKarma.com is where you can help elevate your credit score by using your rental history to boost your credit score. Upwards of 40 points in just 10 days by using Rental Karma. And I've talked about your credit score and how you can leverage it to buy a home, to buy a car, whether you're buying furniture or something as simple as going and getting a cell phone and wanting to lease it. Something as simple as that. Credit checks are always being done. And if you're looking to boost your credit, and you know what's one of the funniest things that I love, I always talk about this with jobs, I talk about this with credit as well. Everybody wants experience in their employee, but they don't want to give you any experience if you don't have any. Everybody wants you to have sparkling credit and a great credit score, but nobody wants to actually give you the chance to earn great credit and build it. Here's an opportunity for you to be able to do that, whether you got credit cards or not, and you've already gotten into the game of building your credit. If you're a renter out there and you're renting an apartment or a townhouse or whatever the case may be, Rental Karma is for you. Use your rental history. You pay your rent on time, it's going to help elevate your credit score. And we're talking upwards of 30 to 50 points, 40 points immediately in 10 days. If you've got a long enough rental history that they can go back and access, you can see your credit score boost 40, 50 points. RentalKarma.com is where you need to go. Use the promo code LTN25 to get 25% off of their services. RentalKarma.com. Use the promo code LTN25 to get 25% off of their services when you use RentalKarma.com. Use your rental history and present and future to elevate and boost your credit score. So, with that said, let's get to social media maneuvers. And I want to take some of your comments out there. But before we do that, I do want to ask a favor of everyone out there. And that is to simply get you to subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also, hit the like button, okay? Only 32 likes. That's way too low for this point of the show, okay? Over 110 of you out there and only 32 likes. Come on, guys, what are we doing? All right, let's get those likes up. First, let's hit 50. All right, and then once we hit 50, let's get to 75. And before this show is over, I'd love to be hovering around the century mark, if at all possible. So if you haven't hit the like button, please hit the like button. I urge you to hit the like button. And I'm going to thank you in advance for hitting the like button. So let's get to the comment section. I don't see a ton of comments, so this should be relatively quick. But my man Gregory Lightbody starts us off, says, starting to like Jamin Davis more than JOK and Parsons. His 4.37 impressed me, but I'd want to trade down and get him. Here's the thing. You're not going to be able to trade back too far from 19 to get a guy like Jamin Davis. Again, look, it's funny how we do this all the time. There's 64 guys going in the first round. Only 32 can go, but depending on who you talk to, 64 guys are going in the first round. Jamin Davis is a guy that you're not alone. There are people that are starting to have Jamin Davis rise up their board, and he may overtake JOK. You may be more likely to trade back and get JOK than you are Jamin Davis. That's how these things happen when a guy has that kind of height, weight, speed, and then the tape kind of jumps out, and you watch certain games, and a guy shows you what can carry over and translate to the NFL game. It's a different frame. You know, JOK is 6'1", 221. Didn't want to run. Jamin Davis is 6'3", 234, and he just ran a damn near sub 4.4. That's different. I've already talked to you about what kind of speed that is. That's different. If he ran a sub 4.3, that's sub 4.4. That's different speed. So he may be jumping up draft boards. You may not be able to draft him at 24. You may have to take him at 19. You may have to go up to get him, as a matter of fact. You know, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these linebackers. This is a deep linebacker draft, as I've mentioned already, though. It's loaded. with guys like Jamin Davis that are coming out of nowhere. It's loaded. Pete Werner had a good day yesterday at Ohio State's Pro Day. Like, this draft is loaded with athletes at the linebacker position. They're going to be good football players all over the place. In the first 4 rounds, I believe, you're going to be able to get really good quality starting caliber linebackers rounds 1 through 4. You may find a gem still sitting around in the 5th round. Like, this is going to be a really good draft for linebackers. So, we'll see what happens with Jamin Davis. You can't say you like him, he's impressing you, and you like him more than Parsons, but you want to trade back. Parsons is probably going to be a top 10 pick. If not, he won't make it out of the top 15. You can't say you're starting to like him more, but you want to trade back and get him. That's generally not how this works. When a guy has the kind of pro day that Jamin Davis just turned in, he doesn't go down draft boards, he goes up. I don't know where he was before his pro day. He might have been a 2nd round pick. He might have already been in the 1st round. If we're assuming he was back into the 1st round, well, he just jumped up into the mid portion of the 1st round, which means you can't trade back and still get him. So that's something to just to digest there. This one is also from Gregory Lightbody, who writes, Tommy Tremble was also impressive. Thought a 4.59 was very good for him. Yeah, 4.59, 4.6 flat, whatever it ends up being. I saw it in the range of 4. I think I saw 4.58 to a 4.62 was the range that I saw his 40 times in. That's an excellent time for him. Not a good, that's an excellent time. And what people fail to realize is when you look at the best tight ends in football, most of these guys aren't running sub 4 or 5s, okay? When you're talking about Travis Kelce is like a 4.58 guy, okay? When you're talking about Zach Ertz in his prime, Zach Ertz ran a 4.75. You know, the one outlier is George Kittle. He ran a 4.52. So a lot of these guys that we're talking about at the tight end position, I don't know what Darren Waller ran as a wide receiver coming into the league, but it translated over to tight end, but it wasn't a 4.4 anything. It's probably more like a 4.5 something. So when you hear of a 4.6, a 4.5, whatever, that's really good. That's athletically gifted for a tight end. And if you're scooting at 4.59 or you're scooting at 4.6 flat, you're going to separate from linebackers and safeties at the next level. We see it all the time. We see guys running 4.7s. Jason Witten was a 4.8 guy for much of his career. He might have come in at a 4.7 and some change. By the time he was done, he was a 4.8 guy and he was still separating. So you can separate in this league running a 4.75. If you're running a 4.6 flat like Tommy Tremble is, you're going to be able to do some things. And so I thought that was a tremendous time for him. And I think he solidified himself as one of the first 3 tight ends off the board and a 2nd round pick in my estimation. Got another comment here. This one is from DMV fan 1978. Why all black, G? Just my swag today. Nothing in particular. This has nothing to do with nothing. I mean, I could easily just spin it and say Daniel Snyder got 100% of the Washington football team today officially, but it ain't even about that because I already knew that was coming. It had nothing to do with that. If I wanted to spin it that way, I could, but no need in me lying to you. This was how I was feeling, all black, dressed in all black like the Omen. So that was the swag of the day. It was cold outside. I felt like coming on and being cold-blooded. So that's what I did. Gregory Lightbody says, thoughts on Liam Eichenberg? Feel like he can be a good 2nd round pick for Washington. Yeah, he's a solid tackle, man. Really solid football player. I don't think he's a 1st round type tackle, but again, these tackles get pushed up. I can see him ending up late in the 1st round, but he's a 2nd round pick all day long, all day strong. So solid football player. I think he's more of a right tackle than he is a left tackle, but we will see. I think he's a 2nd round pick, and he's one of those guys that could be available at 51, but I think more likely than not he's gone before the 51st pick in the draft, especially if we see a run on tackles toward the end of the first round. I think you're going to see the tackle and really just the offensive line in particular, because you got the USC guard that's probably going to end up going somewhere in the first round. I think you're going to start to see a run on offensive linemen in particular as we get to the mid portion of the first round. And you're going to start to see the Rashawn Slaters and all of those guys, the Christian Darrisaw's of the world come off the board as we get to the mid portion of the first round. And I think it's just going to take off from there. You're going to see all of those guys start to really come off the board. And Eigenberg can be one of those guys that could come off early second as a run over, spillage as I like to call it, from the first round, and a run on tackles potentially at the end of the first round. So we'll see what happens with him. Ali Side says, Lou, who's the best defender in this year's draft? Micah Parsons. By the way, are you coming back tonight for Prospects 101? So no Prospects 101. That's a story for another day. I probably will tell you all about it on Friday. Why you may not get one at all this week, we will see. I will tell you this, if you're a Washington fan and you're out there, Washington show will be tonight instead of Thursday night, moving it up a day to free up my entire Thursday. So the Washington football report live will be tonight at somewhere between 8:30 and 9. I'll let you know. Be looking for it at 8:30, but it could be as late as 9, no later than that. But look for that tonight. But no draft prospects tonight. You may not get one this week, but if you don't get one this week, know that you'll get multiple Draft Prospect 101 shows next week. So there will be no Draft Prospect show. But as far as the best defender in this year's draft, I think that distinction probably has to go to Micah Parsons. I think you would have to give him the nod. I think his talent and what he is capable of at the next level, his package of size, speed, physicality, he has a chance to wreck shop at the next level. So I think he would be considered the best defender in this year's draft. I really firmly believe that. In a draft that's being dominated by offensive skill players, quarterbacks, tight ends, receivers, I think he might be the first name that comes off of the tip of your tongue when you're talking defenders in the 2021 NFL draft. I've still got a lot of tape, which is why I'm a little apprehensive to declare anything definitively. But there are no defensive linemen in this draft that are going to reach the status of Derek Brown from last year, where you think, oh, this guy has a chance to be, a bull in the china shop that can just come in and wreck shop at the next level. There are none of those guys in this year's draft. So there are no interior defensive linemen. We've done the edge rushers already. None of them are at the level of a Chase Young from last year's draft. We talked about the linebackers already. He's the alpha of the group. So I think the cornerback position, Caleb Farley had a chance to be that guy, but the back is just a problem for me. So, and there are no safeties that reach that level in this year's draft either. So I think it's Micah Parsons. So there's that. Gregory Lightbody says, what did you think of Mon running that 4.5 yesterday and his pro day overall? He ran a 4.57, I believe is what was reported. I think I talked about that yesterday on the podcast. I think I just threw that out as a one-liner at the end of the show about Kellen Mond running a 4.57. I saw a throw he made. Everybody was making ridiculous throws at their pro day where he rolled out, stopped, planted, threw across his body, threw a beautiful ball like 50 yards down the field. So, look, Kellen Mond's arm strength was never questioned. It's his ability to process quickly, get the ball out accurately, consistently, and that was the thing for me. And then his ability to make plays off schedule. There's nothing off schedule about a pro day. Everything is scheduled and regimented. So his pro day was fine. Again, pro days are exactly what they're supposed to be, a showcase of a guy's talent. If you can't showcase your talents at a pro day where it's scripted and you set this thing up meticulously to highlight your strengths and maybe show them that one or two of your weaknesses that you may have had on tape that you have cleaned up, maybe it's a footwork thing, maybe it's a shoulder thing or whatever from a quarterback perspective. If you can't do that in a pro day setting, then, what are we talking about? His pro day was fine. I told you, pro days aren't a big deal for me from a quarterback standpoint because you're throwing against air. There are no defenders on the field. It's not even 7-on-7. You're literally running around and you're throwing to one guy out there. So if you can't do that, that's a problem. You should have a really good pro day. And he did by all accounts. That doesn't change how I feel about Kellen Mond. Until I'm actually able to go to one of these, I'll just have to rely on guys that are actually there, because I imagine watching a guy spin it in person and watching the ball leave his hands because I remember watching guys throw in person, growing up playing high school ball, and how you could see it come out of a guy's hand and whoa, he can throw, he can spin it. And it looks different coming out of other guys' hands. Whereas I've seen soft tossers throwing the football. You're like, okay, yeah, he's got a pop gun arm. All right. It changes when you can see it live. So I'd imagine that guys that weren't privy to meeting him before or seeing him play in person got to see him up close and personal, see his size, see the mechanics. They look mechanical to me. I can't stand mechanical quarterbacks, but he's got an arm. He meets the eyeball test. He's an athlete. He checks off a lot of boxes. My thing is, and I told you, I saw growth from him at Texas A&M in 2020. Like the maturation from 2016, 2017, when I first laid eyes on him, to 2020 was a big, big leap. You saw a guy that got fundamentally better. And I'm not as down on him as I was coming into the process. That said, the pro day isn't going to move me much on a guy like Kellen Mond. For me, quarterbacks and pro days, not going to move me much. They're just not. I'm more interested in the skill guys, the run and jump guys than I am the quarterbacks, because your tape is more along the lines of what's going to get me excited about your game. Because as we talk about with me, I'm an off-schedule guy. Because in the NFL, it's rare that shit goes the way that you intend it to go. So for me, I need to be able to have a guy go off schedule and be able to produce when things don't go the way you drew them up in practice. And for me, you don't get to see that in practice. That's not something that happens in practice for these players quite often. So I can tell you this much. I'm not blown away by quarterback's pro day because you don't see the off-schedule nature of a quarterback in a practice setting, which is what a pro day essentially is. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but I didn't think much of Kellen Mond's pro day. If you liked him before his pro day, you still like him. If you didn't, you don't. If you were on the fence, maybe it swayed you one way or the other. Maybe it did. DMV fan 1978 says, just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. All black generally means you weren't feeling a Washington update. Again, I could have spun it and said, hey, Dan Snyder officially got 100% of the Washington football team today, if I wanted to go that route. But I wasn't really invested in that because I knew the minute, and I already explained this to you, so I don't really need to beat that horse. It's dead. I've talked about it. But the minute Beth Wilkerson took over the investigation and the NFL said, hey, she got it, and then they later came back and said, nah, we'll take over because of the backlash that they were receiving, that told me all I needed to know. He wasn't going anywhere. And it wasn't enough to get rid of him. So Captain Spartan 04 says, My new draft hope is that the Packers will want to be aggressive for like the 4th draft in a row and trade up with us, pick up an extra 4th and a 5th. I don't think they're going to do that this year. But they have been uber aggressive because they felt like they could win a Super Bowl. And not only did they feel like they could win a Super Bowl, they felt like we want to not only keep this window open, we also want to extend it if Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be here in 2 or 3 years from now. So that's why they traded up to get Jordan Love. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't bank on them moving anywhere this year. So don't get your hopes up. Got a super chat. This one is from Rich O'Flair. Thank you for the super chat, Rich O'Flair. Thank you. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, how far do you think Caleb will fall? Would you use a 2nd or a 3rd? He's not going to fall that far. Okay. What we've seen in the past, if a guy has an avalanche of a fall, okay, like it's a precipitous fall and he can't stop it in time to be a 1st round pick, he's going at the top of the 2nd round. We saw it with Jalen Smith when he wasn't selected in the 1st round with the injury coming out of Notre Dame. We saw it with the Jacksonville linebacker coming out of UCLA some 5 years ago or so when he had Miles Jack, when he had the injuries and the concerns coming out of UCLA. He was a top of the 2nd round type of guy. Generally speaking, if you have a guy that has a precipitous fall because of injury, it usually stops. Remember, there was concerns about Reuben Foster. He had the blow up at the combine, got sent home. So there were calls for concerns about his character, which came to fruition. But more importantly, there were issues with his neck that people were concerned about. And remember, he got taken, I think the 49ers traded back into the 1st round to snag him at about 27 or something like that, 31, whatever it was, back into the 1st round. Like, guys aren't going to fall too much further than that. Hell, what was the corner for the Eagles that they drafted out of Washington that was injured, that tore his ACL during the draft process? And Eagles still took him, I think, with like the 24th or the 14th pick, something like that. Never really panned out in Philadelphia, but injuries usually don't stop teams from taking talented football players. 1st round, late 1st, early 2nd at the worst. So he won't be a 3rd round pick. He won't fall off the face of the draft landscape. He's too talented for that. So I still think he's going to be a 1st round pick. Despite the injury, someone will get clearance from their team doctor and say, this guy's fine. And he'll be a 1st round pick. But worst case scenario, he's an early 2nd. He's not going to fall any further than that. Trust me when I tell you that. Captain Spartan 04, thank you once again for the super chat, Rich O'Flair. Captain Spartan 04 says, any of the edges you broke down you think my Steelers could potentially get in the 5th round? I feel like there'll be a few that will meet what you're looking for. If you're talking about off the edge, not hand in dirt, 5 tech, there could be a couple that tickle your fancy. The guy that to me would make the most sense for the Steelers, but it's not a 5th round guy, is Roche. I told you I love this guy. He to me fits exactly what you could use opposite of TJ Watt. Just a crafty, know-how pass rusher that's going to fill up the stat sheet. Tackles for loss, solid in the run game, beat guys around the edge, kick a tight end's ass in the run game. He just knows how to make plays. I think it's the perfect guy opposite, but you're going to have to probably spend more likely than not a 2nd or a 3rd on him. So 5th round, there'll be some guys around, but you're kind of fishing at that point. Once you get in the 5th round, it's a crapshoot. I mean, the entire draft's a crapshoot for that matter, but you're really rolling the dice in the 5th round. You get back there and it's like you're pretty much picking table scraps of what's left of the edge rushing position at that point. So you want a good guy, you probably need to go in and get yours in day 2. That's when strike while the iron's hot in day 2, when a lot of guys will probably be coming off the board as pass rushers in the second day. Go get yours while it's there to be got in day number 2. You wait till day 3. The latest you want to get a guy is in the 4th round. I still think there'll be quality pass rushers in the 4th round. Let's see if any of them come to mind. I'll give you a name. Kind of fits a longer profile, but Jordan Smith out of UAB is a guy. I think somebody's going to snatch him up in the 3rd round personally, but he could be there in the 4th round. Long 6'6" frame, has the ability to bend around the corner. Not an explosive guy by any stretch of the imagination, but enough quicks and enough athleticism to beat guys around the edge, and knows how to use his length and still hasn't maximized that yet. I think that's the guy that, if I were you, I would be looking at as we get into day number 3 potentially of this draft. John Perez says Washington has so many options what they can do at 19. They can trade up, they can stay put, and they can take someone, or they can move back and get picks. I told you 19 is a really good spot to be in for Washington because there will be spillage that happens. We're talking about 5 quarterbacks potentially going in the top 10 picks now. It was 4 just a week ago. Now it's 5 potentially, with the 49ers trading up and thinking about taking Mac Jones at 3. We can see 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10. That's going to force spillage. You're going to have players that have no business being on the board at 19 on the board at 19. Only 10 players could go in the top 10. 5 might be quarterbacks. Kyle Pitts may make it a tight end, 5 quarterbacks. You've got to assume Micah Parsons is going to be one of those picks. So you're talking 5 quarterbacks, a tight end, and a linebacker, and we haven't even scratched the tackle position, nor the cornerback position, nor the wide receiver position, which we know wide receiver is going to at least have 1, if not 2, go in the first 12 picks. There could be 3 receivers gone in the first 12 picks. You could have a corner, a linebacker, a tight end, 5 quarterbacks, 2 tackles, 2 wide receivers, and you're already at pick 12, pick 13 at that point. And linebackers have barely been touched. There'll be some receiver spillage at that point. There'll be some spillage at the offensive tackle position. There's going to be some spillage in this draft. They're going to be talented guys that you look at and say, in a normal draft where 5 quarterbacks don't go in the top 10, this is a top 10 guy. This is a top 15 pick. And you're sitting there at 19 with 3 or 4 of those available for you. Washington's in a good spot. I can say that much. Gregory Lightbody says, heard Washington had meetings with Jamin Davis. You think they'll take him at 19? Sidney Jones, thank you for that. That's the Eagles corner out of Washington that had gotten injured that I was talking about earlier. Appreciate that, guys. Booby, Jordan, Cap, really appreciate that. I don't know if they're going to take him. Everybody's doing due diligence. You know, you just talk to as many guys as you can to put yourself in a position. What if the scenario you posed earlier, where Washington trades back and Jamin Davis is on the board? Maybe that's the guy they're targeting. Maybe at 19, that's not who they're looking at. But if they get a trade they can't pass up to go back to 24, let's say, move back 5 spots, and Jamin Davis is still there, that's right in their wheelhouse, and they picked up picks, that could be the reason that they're talking to Jamin Davis. They're talking to a bunch of guys right now. They don't know what they're going to do at 19. But as Rivera said, and as you have to know, if you've been following the draft long enough, you go into your pick with multiple scenarios on how you think the draft is going to play out, and you've got to be prepared for all of them. When you're not prepared, that's when you do something stupid, like take Josh Doxson. Move back a pick to take Josh Doxson instead of taking Will Fuller the pick before. Jay Gruden admitted as much when he said, we wanted Ryan Kelly, and when he got taken, we were kind of left shuffling our papers. We didn't really know what to do at that point, so we traded back a pick and took Josh Doxson. Well, how'd that go for you? Got to do your homework on these players, though, just to make sure you're comfortable with whatever happens. You'll be fine, And that's what they're doing. I don't know if that doesn't mean anything that they're talking to him. It means they're interested, obviously. But we've seen teams take players that they never had any communications with. It happens all the time. So I wouldn't run too far with that. Captain Spartan says, I know I'm just throwing names out here, but my target list for the Steelers, Creed Humphrey, Javonte Williams, best inside linebacker available, Cameron Bynum, James Hudson, and then best edge available. We'll see how that works out for your boys. Gregory Lightbody says, Geis and Browns cornerback fell to the second round, I think, because of different issues. But Geis was never viewed as a first-round pick. I don't think a lot of people viewed Darius Geis as a first-round type of running back. I think they saw potential first-round talent, but I don't think anybody – remember, that was at a point where the running back position, people felt like, hey, you can get a running back anywhere. You don't have to spend – on a first round, unless this guy is truly dynamic and a game changer at the running back position. You know, you needed to be Ezekiel Elliott to be drafted, and usually those guys go top 5, top 10, and then you don't see running backs go very often in the first round. So I don't think Darius I didn't view him. I can tell you this: Washington felt like they got a steal getting him as late as they did in the second round. Remember, they got him back into the second. They traded back and still got him. I don't think that he was a first round pick that year. And then you said Brown's corner fell to the second, you think because of different issues. I don't know if you're talking about Greedy Williams or what, but again, that might have been just a talent thing. I don't think, again, if you're talented enough, somebody will take you. Despite issues, all it takes is one. If you're talented enough, somebody will take you. You're not going to fall too far down the draft board. Keep that in mind. Let's see. Got another super chat. This one is from Toney Nunn. Thank you for the super chat, Toney. Greatly appreciate you. Writes, I like Horn, JC Horn, Bolton or Mack at 19. What do you think? For me, I think those are Mac Jones won't be there at 19. I think we've come to that conclusion now. He won't even be available for selection at 19. I never thought he was getting past New England at 15, let alone 19 to Washington. That said, Bolton is interesting. I think it's a little early for him, especially with the spillage that I think is going to take place. I think it might be a little early for a guy like Bolton. And JC Horn is a guy that I still have work to do on. So I can't really speak to whether he's worthy of the 19th selection or not. I honestly think that may be a little early for him too, but we'll see. I think he's more of a later portion of the first round, early second round. Again, this is me talking blindly. I don't want to make any definitive statements because I haven't watched enough of JC Horn. The little that I have watched, I've seen good coverage from him, but he's gotten beat. Okay, I watched Devontae Smith put it on him in 2019, and so I have my reservations. I need to watch, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, Captain Spartan 4 says, what's your thoughts on how hard it is to make the league, and how do you tell someone they aren't good enough to make it? Every year, someone we're all high on just doesn't make it. It's hard. It's really hard to make it in the league. I love those NCAA commercials that say, hey, there are over XYZ amount of NCAA scholarship athletes, but in only XYZ amount of them go on and play professional sports. Like, you need to understand that. Like, just because you play at a Power 5 school, and all of these guys come out of their respective high schools, and they're the big man on campus, and they were dominant. They were a 4 or 5-star recruit. In certain cases, you're a 3 or 2-star recruit, and you feel like you were under-recruited. And there are reasons as to why. You might have been 5'10" going into your senior season, and then over the summer, you sprouted up to 6'4" and turned into a 230-pound behemoth as a tight end or a wide receiver, and no one was recruiting you because you were a small shrimp before. These things happen all the time. At the end of the day, everybody's not going to make it to the league. It's so hard. Just like the NBA, it's harder in the NBA because it's only 15 players per team. At least there's 53 roster spots on an NFL roster, but it's still hard because it's the best of the best. It's the creme de la creme. The greatest athletes in your respective sport come together in one giant pot, And you've got to find a way to get past all of that. And sometimes it's about chance. Sometimes it's about fit. You just get in the right system. You know, you might not be a better athlete than a guy that goes undrafted, but he got the opportunity you didn't. You know, sometimes it's better to be undrafted because you get to pick your spot than it is to be drafted into a situation where you're the 5th guy on the depth chart and you don't get a chance. So, it could go both ways. All I would say is you just got to believe in yourself. You know, you can't, if you don't believe in yourself, then how are you supposed to expect someone else to believe in you? That's why I talk about athletic arrogance all the time. You hear guys all the time, I'm the best in this draft at my position, yada, yada, yada. Or I'm the best in this draft on the defensive side of football, whatever the case. They have to have that. You have to believe that. Even if it's not true, you got to believe that. If you don't believe that, then you're the type of guy that could have their confidence wane very easily. You got to believe that, hell, if I get beat on this play as a corner, I'll be back. I'm talented enough, I'll be back. Like cook crack, don't worry. If I'm a receiver and this guy's kicking my ass, I'm going to make a play eventually. I'm going to get mine. So it's all about confidence. Borderline cockiness, arrogance, you got to have it. It's called athletic arrogance. You got to have it. You got to believe that I'm better than the guy lining up in front of me, and I'm going to prove it to you. And even if you don't have the requisite height, speed, whatever that all these scouts are drooling over, you got to outwork the next man then. You got to find a way to get your foot in the door. And unfortunately for guys, a lot of times, I can attest to this firsthand. When you're more talented than everybody else growing up, you don't always develop the necessary work ethic. And then by the time you realize, oh, you just a regular athlete, well, everybody's passed you by because you didn't have the work ethic that you should have developed as a youth. So I would always tell people, whether you're the best or you're just marginal, work your ass off. You do that, you'll put yourself in a great position to succeed at whatever the hell you're doing. Whether you're an athlete or you're just working in the business world or you're just working in the workplace, you'll succeed at whatever you're doing if you just have work ethic. Outwork the man in front of you. It'll prove to be huge and provide you with massive dividends. So that's all I would say. Anyway, I digress. Got another super chat. This one is from Jordan Light the GOAT. Thank you for the super chat. Jordan Light the GOAT, greatly appreciate you. Who writes, have you tried PFF mock draft simulator? No, I don't do any of the draft mock draft simulators. I don't need to do that. That's not my thing. I come up with my own mock draft. It is what it is. And those things are fun. Don't get me wrong. I just don't partake in any of it. It's similar to fantasy football. It's fun. I know a lot of people that do it. People that come to me for advice and things of that nature, but I just don't do it. It's not my thing. Same thing with mock draft simulators. I just don't do it. It's not my thing. Draft, Jordan Light the GOAT. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Jordan Light the GOAT. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, why has Shaun Wade fallen so much? Because his tape this year was disgusting. That's why. To me, Shaun Wade should have gone back to school and played safety. And if I'm Shaun Wade and I decided to come out and done with the college life, I'm ready to try my hand at the NFL, I'm telling every single team out there that I'm a safety. I'm a safety. Go back and watch my tape from 2019. I'm a safety. Or 2018. I don't think he's a corner in this league. I don't. He got his ass whooped in 2020. Badly. I mean, his tape is just, he's so fundamentally flawed. I don't think he's a tremendous athlete. He's got that athletic arrogance I talked about, but he's an example of when athletic arrogance goes wrong. You know, the guy that thinks he's better than what he really is, like Robert Griffin III, for instance. That's when athletic arrogance goes awry. When you think you're your nicest dude on the field, but you're really not. That's when shit goes sideways. I equate it to the guy on the court that thinks he's got the nicest handles and wants to dribble all over the place. And then I step up to him and I pluck him and he wants to call foul because he thinks he can dribble. And then you go up and you take his cookies, and because he's gotten ripped, he wants to call foul. Come on, dude, I didn't touch you. Stop. Your handles aren't nice. Stop dribbling for the last 20 seconds and give it up. Do something with it. So Sean Wade, to me, the tape is bad this year. It's bad. It's bad. Sometimes it's bad. As a wise woman once told me. Sometimes it's bad. It was bad this year. It was really bad. It's not a lot of good out there for him. So, at best, if he wants to parade himself around as a corner, at best, he could hope for a late day 2 pick. I think he's more of a 4th round pick at this point as a corner, but we'll see what happens with him. CGM87, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Lou, I hate the 17th game. Buffalo is gonna 07 New England us with Josh having a pick 6. What do you think about Trask in rounds 2 or 3? Excuse me. He's gonna be interesting because the last couple of drafts have been an indictment on guys like Kyle Trask. We don't see the stationary, immobile pocket passer be snatched up in the 2nd or even 3rd round for that matter the last 2 years. Those guys aren't getting picked until day 3 now. I want to see if Kyle Trask can buck that trend and be taken in the 2nd round. I think his talent suggests that he should be taken somewhere in day 2. But again, that's not what's happening. Last year, the only guy taken in the 2nd round at the quarter, or day 2 for that matter, at the quarterback position was Jalen Hurts. Like, we don't see these guys. I thought that people were going to fall in love with Jacob Eason's arm. They said, no, he can't move. Yeah, he's got a big arm, but we weren't blown away by his Washington tape. And he's a stationary passer, so we'll wait until the 4th round to take him. And the Colts, they took him in the 4th round as a project, and they just bypassed him altogether by going out and getting Carson Wentz. So that tells you how they feel about Jacob Eason. He sat under Phillip Rivers for a year, and they still aren't even entertaining the idea of giving this guy a sniff. So pocket passers are not, in vogue right now. So it'll be interesting to see if Kyle Trask is bitten by that same bug that seems to be infecting, the rest of the league, as to where these, pocket passers and immobile guys ultimately go in the draft. But I think he's got 2nd, 3rd round type of ability, but we'll see. Bottom line is, I don't know I think worst case scenario, I don't see him being a day 3 guy. I think he'll get taken in the 3rd round at worst. He may even go in the 2nd. I don't love the 17th game for what it's worth, but what are you going to do at this point? It's here and it's not going away. So, and I do think that could be an ass whooping in the making, but you never know. We'll see. That's why they play the game. We could show up in Buffalo and Josh Allen could be out that game. We could show up in Buffalo and they're not as good in 2021 as they were in 2020. Who knows? We'll see. Ryan Fitzpatrick could be on one of those heaters at that point, and we could go into Buffalo and put up 38 and beat them. Highly unlikely, but why not, right? All right, so that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, and social media maneuvers. Let's quickly get to my final segment, and that's garbage time. And before we jump into garbage time, I want to have another call to action for you guys to make sure that you are getting the hitting the like button, subscribing to the Louie T Network for more great content, and turning on the notification bell. We've gotten that like count up to 71, so I greatly appreciate that. Now let's get to 75 and see if we can't get as close as possible to 100. Over 140 of you out there listening currently, so there is enough of you out there to get this thing up to 100. So let's see if we can't get that done here in the next 10 minutes or so before this pod is wrapped up. So I just wanted to close this show out. Nothing major here. The NFL owners are meeting this week. We talked about the 17th game being voted on yesterday and that ruling coming down. I thought it was going to be a unanimous vote. It turns out that the Bears were the only team to vote against a 17th game for whatever reason. But we knew it was going to be heavily swayed in the favor of a 17th game. And so it was 31-1 on that count. Daniel Snyder got 100%. He got the blessings, essentially, as the NFL owners voted to allow Daniel Snyder to get the waiver necessary to purchase the remaining 40.5% of the Washington football team's stake, making him the sole owner of the Washington football team now. And so, much to the chagrin of most Washington fans, that ball is moving at a very rapid pace and looks to be in the process of heading towards finalization. So for anyone hoping that there could be some saving grace in the 23rd hour, Ichnay on that, Snyder was able to get the necessary votes to get the waiver, to get the $850 million that he needs to purchase the rest of the shares of the Washington football team. So that's pretty much it today. I got a comment here from Gregory Lightbody. He says, why do you like Mills over Mond? To me, Mills is more of a development. Mills is more talented. That's why. Mond, both of them need developing. But, you know, it's the same thing I look at with Kyle Allen. A lot of people don't understand that Kyle Allen, coming out of high school, was the #1 recruit in the nation. Okay, he was the #1 recruit. The guy has talent. Davis Mills was one of those types of guys, like 5-star recruit, you know, big time arm, was one of the stars of the, you know, one of those 11 on 11 camps that they would have, you know, the QB 11, Elite 11 camps that they would have. He was one of those guys voted most likely to succeed in the NFL. Like, he looks the part of an NFL quarterback. He played in a pro style system. You see him going through progressions at Stanford. Like, there's a lot to like with Davis Mills. Obviously, there isn't a ton of body of work, which you would like to see, and you would not want him to be injury prone, which is the polar opposite of Kellen Mond. Ton of tape, ton of experience, stays healthy, all of that good jazz. But again, I'm just looking at how guys project to the next level. For me, Davis Mills projects a little bit better than that of Kellen Mond, but we'll see. You know, we could be flat out wrong about Kellen Mond, and he could turn out to be a stud. I just feel like I've seen a ton of these guys that look like Kellen Mond over the years. Seen a bunch of them come and go. And again, that doesn't mean anything. Just because we've seen the, what's the guy from UCLA that was drafted by Green Bay? Just because we've seen a bunch of those guys not do anything at the next level. And we've seen a ton of them. Him, you guys know who I'm talking about. The one that, I think he's in Arizona right now, or who knows where the hell he is at this point. But we've seen him. We've seen guys like, what's the quarterback that used to, Josh Dobbs. Like, these guys, they come along all the time. Storybook career in college, played a bunch of years, a bunch of starts under their belt. We got to see these guys. But we know what they are as quarterbacks for the most part. You know, and he looks like another one of those guys. He doesn't look like Dak Prescott to me. Kellen Mond doesn't look like Dak Prescott coming out of Mississippi State. He doesn't look like that to me. He looks more like Joshua Dobbs, less like Dak Prescott. So, for whatever is worth. Hundley, thank you, CGM87. Brett Hundley. He looks more like Brett Hundley and Joshua Dobbs than he does Dak Prescott. And that's what you're hoping to be, Dak Prescott. And I don't see Dak Prescott in him. I've seen growth though, a lot of growth. I don't see Dak Prescott though. So whatever, that's my explanation for you. You know, that's how I view it. We can see it totally different, and that's okay. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me on this 152nd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys on Friday. We had to get back on track here on the podcast. Missed Monday, so I wanted to go back to back and get back on track. And so Friday we'll clean things up. If anything else takes place, any more pro days of note take place, we'll have all those things for you on Friday. Meanwhile, if you're a Washington football team fan, join me tonight, okay, as we will go live and talk about the Washington football team. And I really want to focus on the 19th pick on tonight's show, 19th and the 51st pick. 19th in particular, because I'm fascinated with the 19th pick and what can happen and what do we think is going to happen. What do we think Washington's going to do with their first round pick? I really want to dig into that as we start to turn the calendar to April. I want to talk about that tonight, so I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tonight. Hopefully you'll be able to join me and we'll talk about the Washington football team and the prospects of them maybe getting a quarterback or some other position in the first round as they currently sit at number 19. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thank you for joining me on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. As always, I appreciate you guys getting the likes up to 85. I want to try and get it up to 90. So if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Louie T Network first and foremost for more great content. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And then hit the like button on your way out. 115 of you currently still out there. Only 85 likes. So a difference of 30. We can do this. We can do it. All right. In any event, I thank you guys for joining me. I will see you later on tonight if you're a Washington football team fan or you just want to come and kick it and stop by, say what's up. Please, by all means, do so. If not, I'll see you on Friday. Louie T Network podcast. Have a good one.